All right. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at doing a physical inventory with QuickBooks Point of Sale. We'll talk about getting your physical inventory prepared. We'll take a look at talking about things that we do, such as mapping creating a zone map of your store so that you can break your store into smaller zones and inventory small pieces at a time rather than trying to inventory the whole store at once and having something go wrong and having to start over. We'll take a look at how to enter that information into Point of Sale, and we'll take a look at reviewing the results of our inventory. So we're going to start out with getting my Point of Sale up here. So in our Point of Sale, the first thing you want to do when you are doing a physical inventory is you want to create a backup. So to create a backup, I'm going to go up here to File. I'm going to go to Backup Data. I will tell it to back up to my default location. You could send it to a specific location other than the default if you wanted to. We'll create our backup, and it will back up that data for us. Once that data is backed up, we're then ready to start doing our physical inventory. There are two ways you can do a physical inventory. You can do a physical inventory by using an inventory scanner. If you're using an inventory scanner, we recommend that you set up an appointment with us at least the day before you're going to start doing the physical so that we can go in and organize, make sure that the scanner is working, and review how to read in that data with the scanner once we have it connected and make sure it is working. Next thing we would do is we would, again, show you how to back up, show you how to do the physical inventory, show you what would happen if you get an error when you're doing the inventory with the scanner, and also talk about how you can manually enter data. So now that we've got our backup, I'm going to start by going into my physical inventory. So I'm going to go to Inventory. I'm going to go down to Start Physical. When you start a physical inventory, if you have more than one store, you will get a pop-up that asks you which store you are doing the inventory for. You choose which store you're doing the inventory for, only if you're at the headquarters. If you're at a remote store, you don't have any choice except to do the inventory for that particular store. So once you have the store selected that you're doing the inventory for, you get your list like we see here on the screen. If you're going to be doing inventory in a multi-store situation where you have more than one store, it's really important that you synchronize your inventory so that you can make sure that headquarters and the remote stores have the same inventory quantities at all the stores. To do that, you would go to Store Exchange up on the menu bar, and under Store Exchange, which would be up here on the menu bar, it would say Stores, and under Stores, you would want to send information from the remote stores to the headquarters. Headquarters would then process that information in by doing a receive. Once headquarters is received, they would do a send and send the information back down to all the remote stores. The remote stores would then receive that information, send back up to headquarters. Headquarters would do a receive again, send back to the remote stores. The remote stores would receive, send back to headquarters. Headquarters would receive and send back to the remote stores. And finally, remote stores would receive and send back to headquarters. So that you have a full 3 cycles of send and receive from all the stores. That way you can assure that the inventory that the remote stores have is the same inventory that the headquarters has. When you do a physical inventory, it doesn't report the quantity that you have on hand. It reports the change in the quantity you have on hand. So if the headquarters store and the remote store don't start with the same quantity, and the remote store says, I should have 5 of these. Now I've only got 4. It doesn't send 4 up to the headquarters. It sends -1 to the headquarters. And so headquarters reduces whatever quantity it has by 1. And if headquarters thought you had 6, now they think you have 5. The remote store says, I got 4. Headquarters thinks you have 5, and you're all out of sync. So you need to be sure that you're starting with the same numbers so that when inventory makes that adjustment, those adjustments are going to match at both the headquarters and the remote stores. So I will run back off into my Start Physical, bring it back up. In Start Physical, I can make adjustments to what I see on the screen. Some of these columns I have no use for when I'm doing a physical inventory. I can right-click up here on the header bar, choose Customize Columns, and I can get rid of any columns I don't need. So I can select them and I can remove them. Doesn't do anything at all to your actual data. It only removes those items off of our screen so we don't have to look at it when we're doing our physical inventory. I also like to have my department name, not a department code. So I will select department. I'll do an add. I'll move that up to where department code is. I'll remove department code. I'll scroll down over here on available columns, select my vendor name and add that, move that up, and remove my vendor code. So now I have my vendor name and department names, not just codes, so I can see exactly where I'm at. I can right-click up here on one of the column headers and adjust column width, and then we'll widen my columns out to show the widest thing I have in any of my columns. I can reorganize the information I'm looking at by any column I want. I can organize them by item number by clicking on the little blue bar in front of item numbers, and now I'm sorted by item number. I could sort by item name if I wanted by clicking on the blue ball. I could sort by department if I wanted and list everything by department, or I could sort by vendor and list everything by vendor. Whichever way makes the most sense for however your store is laid out. I could also sort by expected if I wanted to, and I could see how many items I think I have in each category. So I'm going to sort here again by department. Next, if I am using a physical inventory scanner, I would make sure the scanner was clear. I can do that in a couple of ways. One, I can go to I want to. I can choose clear counts from scanner. As long as the scanner is turned on in the cradle and on its home screen, that will then allow me to clear the counts out of the scanner. I can also clear the counts out of the scanner by doing the number 3 on the scanner a couple of 3 times, and that will clear all the data out of the scanner that way as well. If I am doing a manual inventory, then I don't have to worry about clearing the scanner. If I'm doing a manual inventory, I would want to start by going to I want to and choosing to run a report. The report I would run would be a worksheet. On my PI worksheet, I can then see everything I have in my store. All right, come on, where'd you go? I hate it when that happens. My PI worksheet isn't showing up. I think that is terribly rude myself. Well, I see it pop up, but then nothing's actually coming up. So my PI worksheet, if it showed up, would show me a list of all my items. It would show me the item number, the item name, the attribute, the size, the department, the quantity expected, and it would have a line for the quantity I count. When I can resort that list also by any of those columns. I can also right click on or go up to modify that report, and I can add other columns should I need other columns, such as the vendor if I needed to have that one. I can insert by any of those columns I want, just like we can our item list here, so that my item list and my printout are sorted the same way. I would then print out the list, run around the store, and count all of those items. When I'm running around the store, I should have my store divided into areas or zones within the store. The zones are small areas that I am going to work on a little bit at a time. When I am, my zones, the ideal size of a zone is one that if you're using a scanner, you can scan in somewhere in the 10 to 20 minute range. You want to be able to scan it, come back to the computer, put the scanner back on the home screen, put the scanner in the cradle, and then upload those scans to your computer. You would then upload the scans. You would clear the counts in the scanner. Then you can put it back in scan mode. When you put it in scan mode, you are going to choose to read scans. You're going to tell it one of two ways you want to read scans. You can read scans by selecting the option to scan barcodes, which with that mode, you run around and you just scan all the barcodes. Every barcode you scan adds one quantity for that item to the counts in the scanner. There's also an option to scan with quantity. When you scan with quantity, you're going to scan the item, then you must type in the quantity that you just scanned. Whether it's 1 or you have 30 of that item, you must enter that item and press enter. On the scanner, the orange button in the center top is the scan button that activates the scanner. To the right and left of that orange button are two little arrows that are at right angles. They kind of have a little zigzag in them. And those are the enter buttons. So you would scan an item, type in 10, for example, hit the enter button, and you would say, I have 10 of that item. You would then scan the next item, type in the quantity, even if it's 1, and press enter, and say, I have 1 of those. And then you would continue on like that. You can switch between scanning with quantity and just scanning barcodes. So if you have a couple of items that have large quantities, and you want to scan the item and type in how many you have, instead of scanning the same barcode 20 times, then you can switch to between the modes by pressing the escape key and choosing whether you're just going to scan barcodes or scan barcodes with quantity. And you can scan one with quantity, type in the number, press enter, hit escape, go back, switch back to barcodes, then go back to just scan, scan, scan. So you can switch between which way you need to scan at the moment. And like I said, you want to set up an area that you can scan in anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Then you go back to the computer, you press escape a couple of times to get the scanner back on the home screen, plug it in the cradle, then you would go up to I want to, and you would choose add counts from scanner. It would open up a screen which says be sure that you have the scanner plugged into the cradle and that you're on the home screen. You would hit next. You would hit next again, and it would go out and read the contents of the scanner. Now, one of the little issues with the scanners are that occasionally you don't get a full read. It doesn't. You get a full read once you've got it connected, but you don't get a read. You get an error that it couldn't read what you scanned. In that case, you simply take the scanner out of the cradle, put it back in the cradle, do a back on the screen, and then tell it next again. And you might have to occasionally do that a couple of times before it reads. Once it reads, you're all good, and it will show all of those items to you on the screen. There are two tabs on the screen. There are scans, and there's unrecognized. If you have something that is not recognized, the unrecognized tab will be what you see. And on that, it will show you the items that you had a good scan on, both before and after the bad item. The bad item will be sandwiched between two good items. And you can then run around your zone, which is another reason to keep your zones kind of small, so you don't have to run all over the store. So you run around your zone and you find the two good items, and you know whatever is between them is the bad item that you scanned. Ideally, you want to take that bad item and put it on a fix-it table so that you can check it later and make sure that you can rescan that item. If it comes up good the second time, great. If it doesn't, then you know you need to print a new tag for that item and then scan it in so you can get a good count on it. When you get that unrecognized list, hopefully it's a really short list of unrecognized scans, you've got two choices. One is to jot down the two items on either side of the bad item so that you can go find the bad item. Or if it's a long list of unrecognized scans, you can print everything you scanned in that area. And that's the one problem with printing that list. If you have 3 or 4 items that weren't found, it's probably more efficient to write down the good items and where the bad item is between them, and then go find them by writing them down. If you tell it to print the unrecognized scans, it is going to print everything that was in that section that you just scanned. So you may get several pages of printout to find 2 or 3 items. So therefore, it's better to write them down if you just have a couple of 3 items than it is to print out the unrecognized scans. Once you have written down and identified those unrecognized scans, then you will click on the Scans tab. And on the Scans tab, you have an option to choose to select all and then save selected. That will add everything that was a good scan in that section to your counts in the counted column here on your physical inventory list. If you are not using the inventory scanner, then you're going to run around and go to the different areas of the store, come back, and enter those items into the screen. You can enter them by clicking in and typing the number of items that you have, such as 46 or 53, or maybe you found one of those, and you can add the items in that way. You can also add the items by going I want to, add counts by hand, and typing in the item number of that item and how many of them you have. And you can do that for several different items. As you go down the list, you type in the item number, press enter, type in the quantity, press enter, and it adds that to the list of items that you've counted. When you hit save, it adds the count for those items to your sheet. You can see on that one item, 3 boats in a tub, I said I had 1. It thought I had 0, so it says I have +1. If I enter a count that is less than what it thinks I have, it will give me a -1. Down in the lower right-hand corner, I get how many more items I found than expected, how many less items I found than expected, what the retail price is of those items and what the cost is of those items. So it will tell me how much I'm over or short, and it gives me the difference between my total quantities, my total retail, and my total cost on the items that I count. And so then you're going to go through and do that over and over and over again. As you're going through, you can always come down here and hit save and continue. Save and continue will save whatever numbers you have entered into your count sheet. You could then even close out and go back into inventory later, and you're going to be right where you left off. Everything you put in is still going to be there. And so you can use that method to make sure that you don't lose anything by doing a save and continue periodically. Another thing you want to do is when you think you've counted everything, you want to check this little checkbox that says set all items not counted to zero. Well, you can see my checkbox is checked, but you do not see any zeros out here beside items such as that revolving top. So it's a good idea that if you go in here and that box is checked, to uncheck it and recheck it. That will drop in zeros. So now I just zeroed everything I didn't count. Now I can see I'm short 4,714 items. Even though I've checked that and have zeros everywhere, I can still change a number if I need to. And so there's no problem with me adding a number even after I've zeroed them, because whatever I type will override. I'm going to uncheck that again. After you've counted everything, you've selected the set all items not counted as zero. Whether you're doing it with the manual entry or whether you're doing it with the scanner, you're going to want to go up to I want to. You're going to want to go down to run a report, and you're going to want to run a differences report. Hey, at least that one worked. And so we get a differences report. The differences report shows us everything we counted whose quantity is different than what the system thought we should have had. So you can see that one item that I counted one of that it thought I had zero of, since I have a difference of +1. The item that I expected one of and put zero, it says I'm -1. And so it will show you everything that you were over or short of in your count. If I left that checked with all items not counted as zero, it would have showed me the other 4,500 items there on my list that I didn't count, which is why I unchecked it before I went here. I didn't want to see that. But when you're doing a full physical, you do want to see it with those zeros applied so that you can see if there's something you didn't find. If you didn't find something like this basic fund, it's going to zero it out. Even though it thought you had one, it'll zero it out. If something is negative, it's also going to zero that out and make the quantity zero instead of a negative. It's a good idea to print this report, or if you have Excel on your computer, at least send it to Excel so that you can refer back to it later. Or if you have an audit, you've got a list to show them of exactly what all your counts were. I can then close out of this report. I'm back in my inventory. If I was happy with these numbers and I've checked my physical inventory, I've made sure that all my quantities on my differences report are as good as I can get them. And it's not a bad idea if you see quantities on there, especially if the quantities are of an expensive item, that you go verify that either you have more or less of that item than you thought you had when you started. After you've done that, you can do a save and continue. Again, close out a physical inventory. On the server computer, do a backup. You do not have to do the physical inventory from the server computer. You can do it from any workstation you have, but the backup you do have to do on the server computer. So you do a new backup, then you're going to go back into physical inventory, and you're going to pick up right where you left off. If I figure out where I was at, you can see that, there we are. You can see there's your numbers that we had before. You would then apply changes to inventory, and whatever numbers are in my counted column are going to become my new inventory counts. So you also want to make sure before you hit that apply changes, you want to double check that all the zeros are applied. And unchecking and rechecking is not a problem, so that you make sure that all the zeros are applied before you apply changes, because you want to be sure that anything that it did not find is zeroed out, or anything that was negative gets zeroed out, so that you can start with a clean inventory. When you hit apply changes, and I know I don't have all mine zeroed out because I don't want them all zeroed out at the moment, but when I hit apply changes, it says I'm about to update my inventory, and whatever it says in my counted column is going to become my new quantities. So I say yes. When I do that, it's also going to create adjustment memos for anything that is on my discrepancy sheet. Anything whose counts don't match, it's going to put on a quantity adjustment memo. I can then run a PI differences report, which will show me the differences if I want to. I can also run a detail report, which would show me all of my details. If I run that report, I get something that looks like that. It shows me everything that I counted. So I don't have everything zeroed out. It doesn't show me the zeroed out items. But it shows me everything I actually had to count beside. And it shows me anything that I had over or less than I thought I should have. And it shows me the value and the cost and retail difference of those items. And again, you can print that or you can send it to Excel. And as you noticed, when I did the update, it created a adjustment memo. So here under inventory, under quantity adjustment history, I can see I have a quantity adjustment memo there that shows me I had 2 items that were adjusted. If I collapse, I can see those 2 items, and it shows that I was increased the quantity of the 3 in a boat, 3 boats in a tub by 1, and I decreased the basic fund by 1. So I can see what adjustments were made. And that's actually the information that gets sent over back up to headquarters if you are a remote store. And then headquarters receives that next time you do a store exchange, and it adjusts the quantities at headquarters. All right. So, anybody have any questions? I'm not hearing any questions. And the reason we did that backup before we applied changes to inventory was if something goes wrong, and like you forgot to check, set all items not counted as 0, you can restore that backup and then reapply those changes by checking the 0 after you have restored the backup, so that you don't have to redo your entire inventory. So it's really, really a good idea do that backup before you apply the changes. All right. So if nobody has any questions, that's really all I have for you. Again, before you do a physical, it's a really good idea to give service a call and have them set up an appointment with one of the trainers so that we can go over doing the physical inventory with your individual inventory and processes so that we can make sure that everything comes out the way you want it to in the end. And if you're doing an inventory scanner, we can make sure that it is connected and that it is working and that you know how to work the scanner. If you don't have a physical inventory scanner, we do have the physical inventory scanners available to rent. They rent on a daily basis. You can rent one or more scanners, depending on how many people you have to do inventory. And away you go. So I hope everybody got something good. And we'll have a great afternoon. And like I say, be sure to let us know when you get ready to do a physical. We will make sure that you understand all the principles. And we will also make sure that all of the techs know that you're doing a physical. So in case you have an issue when you're doing it, your call is treated as a priority rather than they put you in line and say someone will call you back in 2 or 3 hours. All right. So everybody have a great time, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.